Well, hey there, it's that coding guy here, breaking it down and making it accessible. Welcome back to my Dungeon Keeper series. If you missed the first installments, check out those videos up there. Otherwise, let's dig back into our REST service here. We really spent the first episode digging into how to set up a controller. And we set up this rooms endpoint that basically just returns a string. Now, I like to work very incrementally when I'm working on a project. So I want to make sure that we get the first part right before we move to the second. And that's what we've done here. And to prove this works, we can start up the server here and use Postman to make a request to our service at 8080/rooms. And oops, that was set as a post. And we get a 200 OK, and we get the rooms string back as we expect, because that's what we're returning right here from our controller. And if you remember, we have a command line runner method set up here. And every time we start the server, it's automatically saving a room into the database for us, so that we'll have some stuff to get when we finally hook all this up. So from the controller, if we go back to our N-tier architecture, we need to get into the service implementation layer, or the logic layer, which is where our business logic usually lives. So let's go ahead and make a file for the service implementation and its interface. So I'll make a new Java class here and actually make an interface and call this room service. And we will go ahead and make a Java class that is the implementation of that service. So we'll call this room service impl. And what we want to do is annotate this as an @service. And this does a couple of things. One of those things is, hey, it's a clue to other developers. This thing is a service. The other thing it does is it tells our Spring framework, hey, this is a component that you need to know about, and you're going to have to wire it up and give it to me when I want it. So doing this will make it a candidate for auto wiring, which is going to allow us to hook it into the controller. We'll see that in a second. So what I'll start off doing here is making a method in the controller, in the interface. And we want to make a getAllRooms method. So a getAllRooms method would typically return one or more rooms. It would be some sort of collection of rooms. So I'm going to start off by defining this method signature with a return type and call it a list of room, and we'll call this getAllRooms, like so. I'll go ahead and import that list there. So perfect. And we can make this public as well. And although I think these are, it is redundant. So we don't necessarily have to worry about a access modifier here, because by default, it'll be public for an interface. So now in our room service impl, we want to implement that interface. So we'll say implements room service. Perfect. Now it's immediately yelling at me, right? It's yelling at me because we defined a method here. And if you're not sure what interfaces are, a good way to think about them is they are a contract. They define a list of methods that an implementation must provide the implementation and logic for. So we have defined this getAllRooms method here, but our implementation of that interface does not provide the logic for that. And that's why it's yelling at us right now. So it's saying, hey, class room service impl must either be declared abstract or actually implement the method getAllRooms. So what I'll do here, I love to lean on the tools that we've got. I just hit Alt-Enter here, and I can say implement methods. And this is going to create a shell of the method that we want to implement. Super handy. Saves us some typing, and also saves us the possibility of making a mistake in our typing, which is probably the bigger lift there. And it goes ahead and throws this at override on here. It's not really necessary, but so we could take that off there. And now we have a method that we can actually put logic into to get all our rooms. Instead of returning null right away, let's just return an empty list. Remember, I said I'm really incremental when I code, and this is a personal work ethic. I guess it's just the way I work. So I'm going to make an empty list. Room list equals new array list of rooms. Cool. And I'll actually return this room list now. So this is just hard-coded. And what we can do here is go ahead and make a constructor. And right now that can be blank. That's cool. And now that we've got our logic set up, we can come over into the controller and actually call that method instead of just returning a string here. So in order to use our room service from the controller, we have to declare that. And that means that the room service is going to become a dependency of the controller. And that means, in other words, in order for the room controller to do its job, it has to know about and utilize the room service. So dependencies on classes typically go at the top. So we'll say room service, and do one of these guys, and we can make a constructor for our controller here. So again, I'm utilizing these tools that we've got to generate this stuff automatically. And now that we have done this, we can do an auto wired on the controller. Now, if you've looked around the internet and seen some other things, maybe you've seen auto wired go directly on the declaration. That's okay too, but the Spring docs, as of fairly recently, they all recommend doing controller auto wiring. So if we had more than one service or more than one dependency here, we could just include them all and auto wire in one spot. And so now, if we should be able to return the results of doing room service dot get all rooms. And it's yelling at me. So why might that be? Let's take a look. All right. Required type, string, provided a list of rooms. Oh yeah, that's right. Looks like we were originally returning a string, right? So we have to make this return type the same thing as we're actually returning, right? That's one of the benefits of having a strongly typed language like Java is that we must declare our return types and we must satisfy them. So instead of returning a string for our get rooms, we'll return a list of room. And we'll import that guy. Looks like we're all good there. Let's see what happens if we run this, right? Part of being incremental for me is making some changes and running it. You know, if we go a few hours or, 30 minutes to an hour before we actually run the thing and try it out, well, who knows where our bug is? We've just been working for that long. But if you work for 10 minutes and then you run it and see what happens, your bug is in there somewhere. So let's check it out. I would expect to get an empty array back here, but let's see what happens. Sweet. Looks like we actually did it on the first go. We're getting that 200 okay, and we're getting an empty array, right? And that's because we are returning an empty array list here. So now, instead of returning an empty array list, let's create a new room and return that instead. So I'll do room, my room equals new room. And I don't remember. Yeah, we do have a constructor. Awesome. And we can call this throne room. And then we can add that room to the array list. And rerun the server. And rerun the request. Sweet. So we got that new room back. We didn't give it an ID, so that's null. That makes sense to me. So we've gone one more step, right? We had defined our controller last time. Now we've got the room service impl, and we are implementing the interface. And that may be a question on people's minds, like, why are we bothering to do this interface stuff? And I think I'm going to save that for a bit of a future video because it's going to talk about some repositories and database access. And I think that will make more sense when we talk about and have a little bit more knowledge on the data layer. So I'll make a note and try to talk about that in the repository section when I do my next video. So let's talk a little bit about best practices real quick and this other concept of how this architecture is working and why. So to be clear, if we just stuck all of this stuff in the controller, okay, and I'll just do that real quick. I just took all of the logic from the service impl, put it in the controller. We'll run that guy, and we're getting the same thing back, right? So there's no arcane thing that says that we have to have a room controller, and we have to have a room service impl and a room service that implements. These are just conventions that people have landed on over time to bring a bit of sanity and a bit of convention to the whole process. Now, best practice is that your business logic should be kept out of your controllers. And that's why we did this the way we did. We put all of the logic over here in our service, okay? Because I think about the service as the workbench of our project. Like, this is where all the nitty-gritty stuff happens. It's where all the actual logic work gets done. So in that way, the controller's only real job is to expose an endpoint and then call the right service. Now, it may do a little bit of validation and things like that, but I'm not saying that you no matter what, you should never have an if statement in your controller. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, by and large, all of your business logic should happen in your service layer. So that's cool there. We're returning get all rooms. And in our future video, we will hook up the data layer and then actually pull some stuff out of the database and hand that back. So to recap, what we've done so far is made a request from Postman to our API, which hits the controller layer, and that controller layer called the logic layer. I'll go ahead as the last part of this and do some Git work. So what we'll do here is do a git status. Looks like I have added some files, right? I also noticed that I'm on the main branch. I'm going to go ahead and check out a new branch. Now I use checkout just because I'm just used to it. That's the way I learned. These days, there's a new command called git switch. And I always tend to check out -b because it's just muscle memory for me. So I'll check out a new branch called service, and git add -a. That's taking all of the work that I did and staging it for commit. And then we'll do a commit. Git commit -m. Always -m for your awesome message. And I'm not just going to do like update or test, right? We're actually going to be thoughtful about our commit message. And we'll say adds service layer for rooms. And then I will get push origin master. I'm kind of a stickler on this. No matter what I'm doing, I always git push, not master, I'm pushing to service. I always specify the name of my branch. That way I'm always 100% positive exactly where my commit is landing. And now it's landing on my service branch. Cool. And so that's address, that Git repo is up there. It's public. So that branch is now available. You guys can check it out and clone it down, run it. And I'll put the address once again in the description of the video. And if you like this, give it a thumbs up. Give me a subscribe. Shoot me a comment. And it really helps the channel. So thanks for watching. Cheers.